4 of the Financial Foundations course. Today, we're going to start really getting our hands around the expenses. We're going to understand what the difference between a need versus a want is, and even work on a worksheet so we can figure out sort of what our needs are and what our wants are. And so then when we get into budgeting in the next video, we'll be able to really picture sort of where we can cut, where we can build. I can't wait to get started with you. Thanks for joining us, and let's go. All right, let's get into it for Wrangling Your Expenses, the 4th video in the Financial Foundations course. So what are we going to cover today? So first, we're going to delve deep into the importance of understanding our expenses, especially as you build your practice. Why do the expenses on your personal side matter to your practice? We'll get into that very shortly. Then we'll get into sort of where you should cut when looking to reduce your expenses, and sort of tactics to do so. So we can begin that process of finding ways we can reduce expenses or things that we don't really want to spend money on. We're going to get into needs versus wants and how that plays a role in all of this, as well as incorporate regular expense culling into the future. So when to know when to do this and how this will be changed, or how this will come again as your income rises. It's not something that just disappears just because your income rises. So it's important to grasp now. So when that income rises down the future, you know how to handle it then. And also we'll talk a little bit about the power of embracing expenses as you grow, because not all expenses are created equal. And we'll talk about why. Before we get into it, make sure to follow that newsletter, thinkingcapfinancial.com/newsletter, to get more tips, advice that you can't get here. YouTube, I'm on Thinking Solo. I'm at Thinking Solo. LinkedIn, I'm at Ryan DeRusso. That's my name. Make sure to share this course. We're building this together, we're creating wealth in the private practice space. We're all in this as one, and I would encourage you to share and be a cheerleader for others, because that's how we're going to really build wealth long term. Beware, this is the most important video in this course, so make sure to watch the whole thing. And as I always say, I sound a lot smarter in 2 times speed, so I would suggest watching that and then going back if needed at a slower pace if there's something specific that you want to focus on. All right, wrangling your expenses. So how do we develop an income target when we are in private practice? Private practice income goes like this, right? It's not a straight line. Meanwhile, your monthly expenses, it's a straight line. It varies a little bit between variable expenses and fixed expenses, but every single month it hits, and every single month your credit cards due and your mortgage is due and all these sorts of things. But how do you do this and manage this when you're dealing with this on the expense line? The one way is we need to develop a salary for yourself. And how do we develop that initial salary, especially when you're starting out? It is through what you're going to spend money on in the personal side. Because when we're beginning our practice or business in general, what we need to pay ourselves at the beginning is what we are covering on the expense line. So if we spend $3,000 a month on all our different expenses, that's all we need to pay ourselves from the business, at least for the short time until we've gotten that business off and running. And the lower you can create that sort of expense line on the personal side, the less you have to pay yourself, the faster that business has a chance to take off. We don't look at ourselves as like those entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley and whatnot. But one thing they do have right is they really cut back when they're starting to build. You hear the stories of living out of basements and garages of parents and stuff like that. For you, you don't need that, but you do need to get a sense of what those expenses are so you can reduce your spending now and pay yourself less until that business starts to take off. Again, you are an entrepreneur. This is something that you have become by opening a private practice. May not be a bro in Silicon Valley, but you're still building a business. And so if you treat your personal expenses like the fact that you're building a business, then you're going to have a lot better luck on the business side. So in order to help sort of reduce, we need to figure out what our needs and what our wants. Need is something that you must spend money on for survival. So we have the mortgage, we have the rent, some food. You can't go an entire month without eating. Childcare. If you have children, childcare is a need, especially if you're working, because you need that time to work in order to build up your income so you can afford other things and your children can get other things. And so it becomes a need. Utilities like electricity, water, things of that nature, those are needs. That's not going to change. It's really hard to reduce the needs, outside of calling companies and trying to get a reduced rate or something like that. Meanwhile, the wants are things you spend money on because it brings you joy. These are restaurants, entertainment, vacations, clothing, shopping, anything that you spend on that you don't necessarily need to spend on for survival, but it brings you happiness, it brings you joy to spend money on. When you're in the beginning of the private practice building, you'll want to reduce the amount of wants you're spending on. It's a simple fact of life. As you're building the practice, the income isn't going to be as fast or as consistent until you've reached a certain mark. One way we can counter that is by reducing the amount of wants that we are spending on. And then as we start seeing income really grow in the private practice, we can start incorporating the wants. We just want to make sure that we're incorporating the right type of wants. And we'll get into that in the show notes. And here it is. It's identify your wants worksheet. And let me just zoom in a little bit so we can look a little closer at this. And so what we want to do is answer these series of questions. So when we're evaluating our budget and we're seeing stuff not going towards these types of things that we're going to help shape our ideal lifestyle, then we know that's the area to eventually cut as much as we can from our expense line. And so that's really what our goal is now. And so it's really just going through and really thinking about how you want to spend your money and what you want to spend your money on. And so what activities or experiences bring you the most joy and for fulfillment? I would challenge you to add, 5 to 10 things that you really think about and want to spend money on. When I think about the things that bring me the most enjoyment, what comes to mind? My family, spending time with my family time. Basketball. I'm a big basketball fan. I love watching it. I love playing it. That would fall under that joy scenario. Movies. Movies is a big one for me. I'm a big cinephile. I love old movies, new movies, and everything in between. And with two young kids, I'm often stuck at home because of whatever sort of things that's going on in their life. And one way I can still relax and still be there for my children is through movies. And so I value it quite a bit. Running is another one for me. Having outlets for my creativity. I used to be a writer. I still have that, muscle in me, and I still seek that out. And so making sure that I have room for that is important for me. Time with my wife. How could that play out? It could be incorporating a date night into our budget, that sort of thing. Making sure we're having set time for our relationship. It'll be key for when we get to the budgeting scenario. And so what I would challenge you is just go through and think about the things that you really bring you joy and write those down. So next time when we get to the budgeting phase and next time you're unsure about how to spend money, you can return to this and figure out, is the budget or are my expenses really going towards these things? And then think further along. So how do you envision your ideal lifestyle? So this is going to vary dramatically between individuals. And so you really need to think about how you want your ideal lifestyle to look. And if you're able to figure out sort of what that is, then you can start putting funds towards that. And so you can start shaping that ideal lifestyle. My ideal lifestyle is I want to be home every night to eat with my children, family. That's an important thing for me. I think it's really important that I be there and be there for activities, but also just so we can all eat together. I find that highly important, so I'm going to put that there. I want to be able to take 6 weeks of vacation every year. Every person's going to have a different number there, but can you achieve your goals under that sort of scenario? It's important for me to relax and take breaks and whatnot, because when I'm working, I'm really, focused on that. But because of that, I really need time to re-energize. and this would allow that. I want to work in self-employment. Like that's an important aspect for me. And then I want, let's see, I want to, how would I put this? I want to be to able to explore new things. I enjoy trying new things, trying like new sports or new activities that I've never tried before, and I want to create space for that. And my ideal lifestyle would have space for that, and so that's why I've put that down. So we have that. So go to the next question. What are the most memorable and meaningful experiences you've had? This may help jostle some ways that you want to spend your money on in the future. You can think of one or two, three memories that really stand out to you. One for me is, having my children is a big one that speaks to my family time. Another one, many years ago, my wife and I visited my brother in the south of France while he was there for school, and we ended up touring a couple of towns in the area and hitchhiking actually on the way back because we didn't have a car, and it started raining, and people were so nice to pick us up, and it was just an awesome experience. It really stands out, and so that would be something that I would right there, traveling uh, through France. What's another one? Running a triathlon and things of that nature. And so you'll just go through this and kind of think about things that really stand out to you. And do you want more of that? Do you want less of that? Like really think about sort of, are these things standing out to you because you want more of this in your life? What would you do tomorrow if you won the lottery today? Um, this is another more common question, I would say, because people think about this from time to time, but it's important to kind of put into words. And so this is what this gives you an opportunity to do that. For me, I really wouldn't change a ton. I would work probably a little less, little less, maybe like 8 weeks vacation, and I would bunch those vacations. So, it would be traveling for a month at a time, that sort of thing, um, as opposed to one offs and whatnot. I would continue to work. I love what I do, and I like helping the self employed and private practice owners. That would not change. To work, I would write a book. I would buy a new house. You can choose once. Once are good for this activity. But you can see, even if I won the lottery, my life wouldn't change that much. It's not like I'm saying, oh, great, I won a lottery, let me buy a yacht or something like that. It's just not something that I would really enjoy spending money on. And so I probably wouldn't do it. And you may want that yacht, but you just need to think about sort of what you would actually uh, think about what you would actually do, and then you can use this as you're looking through your expenses to give you ideas about how you actually want to spend your money. Um, when you think about retirement, what you imagine for yourself, people have a real hard time sort of imagining themselves in the future, and they're often wrong. But it doesn't mean you can't go through this exercise, so you can at least start kind of wondering. In that way, it may, again, just kind of change things around, change your perspective as you're looking at the budget. So, where will you be in 20 years? What do you want to be remembered for? All these sorts of things. I want to impact million self-employed people, helping them thrive and in self-employment. Self-employment. So that's a big one for me. That's why I like doing what I do. I want my children to be in fulfilling roles and be able to help them if needed. That's just a personal one, like that's just something that I value and I hold dearly, and my wife holds dearly. And so it's something that we think about from time to time. And so that's going to impact the way we budget. For instance, like we're going to put in our budget a 529 expense every month because we're going to save for their 529s in case they want to go to college one day. Other people are not going to do that, that's totally fine. This is not a judgment situation. This is figuring out what you want and need out of your life. In retirement, you know, I want to write. Uh, Guide. I'm an educator. I'm a guide first, and so what I do here is similar to what I would want to do in retirement. I'm not one to just sit on the beach. In fact, I don't even enjoy beaches. It's a big rift between my wife and I, but it's not something that I want to eventually do. And so I could see myself doing stuff like this, even if it's small scale, like at a community college or something like that. Be happy to. That would bring me a lot of joy. And then just room to do the fun stuff I think of at the time. This will help not only in the budgeting, but when we move forward to sort of retirement planning and those sorts of things in other courses, because now we are starting to recognize what those long-term goals are. And in those future videos, we'll talk about sort of the tactics you can use in order to reach those long-term goals. And so what values are most important to you, and how can you spend reflecting on those values? What is non-negotiable for you? Mine is being there for the family, having time to myself, having space to explore, these sorts of things. It's at some point it's going to be a little repetitive, but that's okay, because that's really narrowing in on the things that you actually care about. And then, how important is financial security and stability to you? For me, it's really important. It's what I've dedicated my life to, teaching others how to do this. So it's obviously very important to me. For others, it'll be a little less so. They're much more used to living on the edge and whatnot. And in self-employment, you have to get a little comfortable being uncomfortable. So the fact that may not be the most pressing thing is totally fine. We just need to make sure, if that's the case, what does financial security and stability mean for you? And then let's work on that, as opposed to what financial security and stability means for me. And so, does this matter to you? Yes, it does. It does, because it means I'm reaching my goals, protecting me, my family and I, and leaving space for fun. That's how I view financial security and stability. And so that's why it matters to me so much. Again, going through this exercise, it's about figuring out what you want and what you need. And that way, when we get to the budgeting, we're going to use that insight to then determine where we can cut, maybe even where we can spend more. So when we are looking at this as a whole, what we want to do is cut all the expenses that are not a need or a want. In fact, we want to make sure that all the money that we have coming to us from our business is being spent for a very clear purpose. That, $1,500 that comes over, that's going to rent. That $200, that's going to groceries for this week. That $30 is going to set subscriptions. We know every single dollar that's going from the business to the personal. The more we're able to do that, the more we can uncover needs or wants that we actually don't need or don't want. And that can reduce the amount that we're spending here, allow us to either pay us less or utilize the money in a better way as we move it from the business to the personal. So how do you cut back when you are looking at your finances and trying to determine between the needs and the wants? For needs, you really have to start pricing out other options. Like you can't go to, like, let's say you have a mortgage and it has a 7% interest rate. And so the mortgage with the interest rate, it's fairly high. You can't not pay that month, but what you can do is price it out, reduce the interest rate, and have a reduced bill. Same goes for things like subscriptions, as well as services. For instance, if you own a home, you may have a termite coverage. Maybe you haven't priced that out in like 3 years. Maybe it's time to reprice that out. This is how you kind of methodically reduce the expenses on the need side of things. When it comes to wants, it's a little different. You can find things that you can cut out, or you can go through that process that they're wants, but based on the worksheet, they're actually needs disguised as wants. And if that's the case, then let's price out other options. Let's try to reduce the bill as much as possible. You can also see about discounts. Things pop up all the time with sales and other things of that nature. So make sure to check in and even threaten to leave if you need to. For those types of wants that you struggle with, sometimes it's shopping, sometimes it's entertainment, whatever, put them into the shopping cart online and let it sit there for at least 24 hours. One of two things could happen. One, you may come back 24 hours later and completely forget about it, and days later realize it's still there. Let's get rid of that. We don't need to spend money there. Two, that organization that you have put that product into the cart, they may send you a discount of some sort. So you may still really want that 24 hours later, but now you have a discount on top of it. Now you're reducing your costs in the process. That could be really valuable. Double check those subscriptions as you're going line by line. Not all subscriptions are created equal in our lives. Some we really use, some we really don't. Those that we really don't, let's get rid of those for sure. And then you can always, either reprice certain ones that you may need, may not need, that sort of thing, or cancel for a time period and then re-up, in a couple months when you're ready to use it again. Takeout instead of delivery, it's an easy one. Between the delivery fee, the tip, and all that, it can really add up, especially if you're eating out a lot or doing takeout a lot. So really would encourage that through this process. Meal plan is a good one. Every week I set aside, I'm the cook of the family, and I set aside what we're going to do. I have an idea of what we're going to spend, like what we're going to eat that week. I even go further and sometimes chop up everything. So at the beginning of the week, it's all just like putting the ingredients together. That's going to greatly reduce the cost through the course of your grocery shopping, which is going to lead to lower personal expenses. And just in general, don't buy without a purpose. It's not going to be, I don't say this as if like you're never going to not buy without a purpose. That's not the purpose of this. It's more, the more we make this a conscious effort, the better chance we have of keeping our expenses with a purpose. And so, sure, you won't be 100% all the time, but if you are now 50% with or without a purpose and you move that up to 75%, that's a dramatic improvement, and you should pat yourself on your back for that. So keep that in mind as you're moving forward and trying to incorporate some of these needs versus wants dynamic. And then as you move forward, it'll just continue to improve because it becomes a lot more conscientious. One thing that you will find as your income grows in your private practice is your expenses will rise. At some point, they may rise faster than the income. If that ever happens, it's just important to return to that needs and wants worksheet and also evaluate, is that spending on a regular basis, is it going to those needs and wants that I have in that worksheet? If not, we can rewrite it. We can reduce the anxiety we're feeling about our spending and get that kind of in check there. And so even this happens as income rises. In fact, if people haven't properly managed this, you could be a millionaire and still struggle with this concept because you're not getting the spending and income balance correctly. And the best way to do that is just return to what you want to spend money on, and then make sure that the levers within your personal spending is actually going to those purposes. Now, one thing I want to encourage you to is to think about expenses on the business side a little differently. An expense on the business side that increases income can be highly valuable. So if you have an expense that is going to, let's say it's $1,000 expense, but it's going to bring you $3,000 in one monthly, either increased patients or, purpose or like a stream of income, then that would be very valuable. And so when we're evaluating expenses on the business side, we need to evaluate it in terms of, is it an expense really, or is it an investment in the business? And if it's an investment in the business, that's really valuable. If it's just an expense, do you need it in order to operate, or is it something peripheral that you may need, may not need, not sure? And then it's just determining whether you have the space for that expense in that case. But if we're investing in the business, or essentially spending in the business in a way that's bringing us more income, well, that's a really good expense. And I would encourage you to, when you come across those, to really jump at those options. You just need to make sure that that's actually going to bring the income that you expect. So what have we talked about? First, make sure to work through that worksheet. You can't figure out sort of those needs versus wants unless you really understand where you want to go in life. And that's really what that worksheet is for. It's really to guide you towards the future. Cull those expenses every once in a while. You can reprice everything, and you can determine if the money's going to needs or wants, and kind of just go through this whole practice again. And anytime you're feeling kind of anxious about your spending, you can just return to this and reset, and it can be very valuable that way. Increase the wants. The more you're spending on wants, the more you're working towards what you want life to be, the better off you're going to be long term. And then embrace certain expenses, because certain expenses are going to bring you a lot more income. And on the business side, especially if you're investing in the business, that's a really good expense. Again, for more, make sure to follow that newsletter, thinkingcapfinancial.com/newsletter. And please send a testimonial to thinkingcapfinancial.com/testimonials. If you leave a testimonial, you could win a prize. And it means a lot. It's spreading the word and making sure we're building wealth in the private practice space. That's it. Let's go.